Good morning, Boker Tov. We're going to start on the top of Daf Yomi Aleph with today's Daf Yomi. The Daf Yomi is talking to us about, we're in the middle of things that basically what happened was Levi had come to Rebbe, and Levi had said to Rebbe, why does our Mishnah list 15 cases where there's an erva that exempts her co-wife from Yibam? There's really should be 16. We should include the case of Anusas of it. We should include the case of somebody who was violated by the wife, by your father, who marries the brother of the boy, the brother. So the Gemara says that when Rebbe heard this, he said to the Levi, I think you don't have anything in your brain. He said, you're missing something in your brain. So when so the Gemara wants to know, why did Rebbe say this? And the Gemara assumes that Rebbe said this because the reason why Rebbe said this was because that was a case that was a dispute between Rebbe Huda and the Rabbanan. That the Rabbanan say that the brother of the son who was born from the violated mother, that person was indeed able to marry her son's brother. But Rebbe Yehuda said they weren't allowed to, and so therefore, since it's a dispute, the Gemara doesn't include it. The Mishnah doesn't include it. The Gemara gives a couple of other examples of where there are disputes, and the Gemara parries off those questions. Then the Gemara gives the principle of Rebbe Chia, where Rebbe Chia said on the basis of the Mishnah 28b, where we said he introduces a principle there that it states where we're talking about a circumstance where there are two sisters, each one marries a different brother, and then both of those brothers die, and they fall to Yibam with a third or a fourth brother. So since those sisters have a Zika, because they're both connected to have Yibam with the same man, therefore we say that they don't do Yibam or Chalitza because they have a Zika with the third man, or the third or the fourth brother. But if each of one of those sisters would have an Erva relationship with that third or fourth brother, then they would be prohibited to that brother, but the other one would be permitted to them. And Rebbe Chia said, in all of these cases, I established a principle, that one is prohibited to this, one is permitted to that one. And one is prohibited to this, one is permitted to that one. And her sister, who's her Yevamos, does either Chalitza or Yibam. So he said, I can apply this principle to all 15 cases of the Mishnah. Gemara then said the way Rabbi Yehuda and Abaye interpreted his phrase. And then on the bottom of Dime B, the Gemara said that Reb Safra says, I can explain it to referring to all 15 cases, even according to the case of an Eishes Achav Shelo Haya Ba'olamo, according to the position of Rabbi Shimon. Because what's an Eishes Achav Shelo Haya Ba'olamo? That's a brother who was born after his other one of it. There were three brothers, but the third brother was born after the second brother died. So Rabbi Shimon, even though we said in our Mishnah he does not do Chalitza or Yibam, but because he was born after the second brother died, Rabbi Shimon says he would do Chalitza or Yibam in that case. However, even Rabbi Shimon would admit that he doesn't do Chalitza or Yibam in a situation where that Rabbi Shimon would admit that in a situation where the third brother was born before the first brother married the second brother's widow, then he would say that there's no Yibam or Chalitza, even according to Rabbi Shimon. But according to the other position, Rabbi Shimon would require Chalitza in that circumstance. So he says, I could have it worked out according to Rabbi Shimon in the case of Rabbi Shimon. And the way to remember it, the Gemara said, was Simanech meis no ad v'yavam, meis no ad v'yavam, where that the way we could do it is in a case where there are not four brothers but six brothers. And the way to remember it is that this idea that first one person died, then the third brother was born, and then the Yibam happened, and then meis no ad v'yavam, and we do that for brothers 5 and 6. And so that's how I could apply this case. So we see from here that Rav Safra says we are dealing with a case of a machokas in our Mishnah. That's how Rabbi Chia is understanding that our Mishnah is dealing with this machokas, or else why would he have that circumstance? It's going only according to the position of Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara now says on top of Tanei, El Rabbi. So why does Rabbi say there's no case of a dispute in our Mishnah? So he says, well, Rebbe Hani Kali Leisle. Rebbe says Rebbe doesn't accept these principles of Rebbe Chia. So that's why Rebbe said to Levi, you have no brain. He says, really, actually, Rebbe does accept these principles, and this is what he said to Levi. Imo anusas aviv bechada mishkachasla betarto mishkachasla. He says a mother who was the anusa of the father, we would only find one of these cases, but not two. Meaning to say, it wouldn't be able to apply to the two principles of Rebbe Chia. Rebbe Chia has two principles. Therefore, he says, I remember when we break down Rebbe Chia's statement, his statement was, in all of them I say, that this one is prohibited to one brother, but is permitted to the other brother. But also that the sister, that she's the Yibum, does chalitza, and her sister, who is her Yevamos, she does either chalitza or yibam. She has either chalitza or yibam. So Rabbi Adabar Kahana says in front of Rabbi Kahana, he says that in the case of Imo, a mother who was the anus of his father, I could only find one half of the principles of what Rabbi Chia was talking about, but I wouldn't find both. And how would that mean? Because he says as follows: Yaakov, if the father was Yaakov, and if he was Ma'anes, if he violated two sisters, Beizachayos, if he violated two sisters, and then Anas Achosa Shehi Vamasa Mishkachasai. Then we would find the phrase that these were two sisters who fall to Yibam with the same man. However, we never have the case of where one was prohibited to one, was permitted to the other, because the two sons that were born from them would not be able to be to do Yibam or Chalitza with their mother's sister, and so therefore we wouldn't have it on that circumstance. And if it would be a case where these two women were not sisters, well then for sure we don't have the case that Rebbe Chia was talking about. So we can find the circumstance where one was prohibited to one and permitted to the other one. However, we wouldn't have the case where it was where they were sisters, because they're obviously not sisters in that case. So that's why the second case doesn't apply. And then Rav Ashi comes along and says, he says, Rav Ashi says, Rabbi doesn't accept this principle of Rebbe Chia. And he says he doesn't have to apply it to all the 15 cases of our Mishnah. And secondly, Bepukta Kamari and Rabbi would say, actually, our Mishnah could actually be dealing with a case of a dispute. And so if that's the case, why does therefore Rebbe say, it seems to me like he has no seichel in his brain? Why did he say that? This is what he said to him. My time masnisin. That Rebbe was saying to Levi, why did you not infer from our Mishnah the masnisin Rebbe Yehuda? Why did you not infer from our Mishnah that our Mishnah is Rebbe Yehuda? And Rebbe Yehuda wouldn't even apply to this case that you said, the Anusa Simo, the woman who was violated by the mother, who was violated by his father, meaning that they weren't married. Rebbe Yehuda would say that such a woman wouldn't be allowed to marry the brother of her son. And why didn't you infer that our Mishnah is like Rebbe Yehuda? You should have been medayik. You should have looked at it closely and realized that our Mishnah is following Rebbe Yehuda, and therefore that case would never be applicable. Why? Because we learned in the Mishnah, we learned in the Mishnah that even though our Mishnah says that there are 15 cases of arayos, there are actually 6 more that are even more severe than the cases of our Mishnah. And the reason is why these 6 cases are even more severe. Why are they not listed? Because those other 6 women, because they could only marry other people. They weren't allowed to marry the brother. And so therefore, since they were only allowed to marry other people, their co-wives are actually going to be permitted. And what are these 6 other people? Imo, ve'eshes aviv, va'achos aviv. And the Mishnah lists one of those 6 cases who can marry the brother is who can't marry the brother, and that's why they're not listed in the Mishnah, is the mother and the wife of the father and the sister of the father. Now, what is it when it says the imo who's not listed because they can't marry the brother, the mother is not listed? Who are we talking about here? If you want to say we're talking about the father's wife, no, that's the second case. I know that's literally the father's wife. So we must be talking about here the anusas aviv, the woman who was violated by the father. Vikotani, and we still say that they can't be listed in our Mishnah. They're only allowed to marry other people. They can only marry others. They can't marry the brother of their son. So therefore, Mad Shamaslay the Islay Haisvara, who is the one who says that the violated woman's son cannot marry her brother, cannot marry the brother of the violated woman's son? Who is the one who says that? So the Gemara says that's Rabbi Yehuda, the Asr Banusa Sav. Rabbi Yehuda is the one who prohibits the Anusa of the father. And for this reason, he prohibits the Anusa of the father to marry her son's brother. And so for this reason, Mishum Hachi Lo Tanile. So therefore our Mishnah doesn't list it, because our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda. So why are you saying we should list the Anusa? It's obvious, and there's 16 cases. Our Mishnah is obviously like Rabbi Yehuda. And so therefore, that's why he said to Levi, you have no brain. So Ravino or Ravashi, Rabbi Yehuda Nami Mishkachaslan. No, he says, I'll tell you, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, you could have a case of the Anusa. How so? How could you have the case of the Anusa according to Rabbi? The Anusa, how so? According to Rabbi Yehuda, how could you have it? The Avar V'Nasif. Because let's say he went ahead and married her. Let's say the mother's son's brother went ahead and married the Anusa, and therefore she falls to Yibam before her son. And so then he wouldn't be allowed to do Yibam with her. So you could have done it, because if he went ahead and married her, the marriage would be binding, even though he's not allowed to do it, but it would only be a lav, it would not be kares, and so therefore the marriage would be binding. So the Gemara says, the ilo katani. We're not talking about cases of where he went ahead and violated. We're only talking about cases that went in accordance with the law. Well, where they're surviving, where the deceased brother didn't violate any laws, we can also have this case. How so? Let's say Yaakov Anas Kalasa, let's say the father, Yaakov, was violated his daughter-in-law against the law. He's not allowed to be with his daughter-in-law at all. And in this case, anyway, she's married. And Yaakov has a son from his daughter-in-law. So therefore, his daughter-in-law is the mother of is married to his son and is the mother of his other son. So those two boys are brothers. And so therefore, Umeis Ruvain, and the first son, the daughter-in-law's husband, dies without any children. And so therefore, now she falls to Yibam before Ruvain's brother, who's also her son. And so that's a perfect case. She's prohibited. He didn't do anything wrong, because her son's, meaning to say that she falls to Yibam before her son, and her son didn't do anything wrong. So therefore, and because she's prohibited, her co-wife is also prohibited. Why wasn't that case listed in the Mishnah? So the Gemara explains, we're only talking about siblings who were born in a permitted manner, not the sibling who was born in a prohibited manner. So therefore, we didn't list that case. And even though Rabbi said to Levi, you have nothing in your brain, but Levi b'masni. So Levi was magia. He made an emendation to our Mishnah. He corrected our Mishnah. The Tani Levi, because this Levi taught Imo about the mother. He says, Levi says the mother sometimes exempts the co-wife and sometimes it doesn't exempt the co-wife. Ketzad, what does it mean? How so? Let's say the mother was married to his father, and then she goes ahead and marries his brother, Umeis. This is the case where the mother does not exempt the co-wives. Why? Because that's the case where the marriage is not binding at all. Why was it not binding? Because she's not allowed to marry his father's wife. And so therefore the marriage was not binding. And so therefore she's not going to exempt her co-wife, because the brother was not even married to the mother. Even though they went through a chuppah, they hired a wedding hall, they hired a caterer, doesn't count for anything because he's not allowed to marry her. But we're on the top of 10b. Let's say the mother was just violated by the father, wasn't actually married, and then she marries she marries the brother, Umeis, and then the brother dies. Then this is like the position that this is like the position of the Chachamim that she would then exempt the co-wife. Right? Even though the sages only listed 15 cases in our Mishnah, really this is a 16th case. Even though it doesn't work according to Rabbi Yehuda, it does work according to Chachamim. We have this 16th case just like we listed. So therefore, we see Levi himself corrected the text of our Mishnah. So the Gemara says, according to the position of Levi, who says that our Mishnah also lists those women who married in a state of a prohibited matter, meaning to say that our Mishnah is also talking about those cases who married in a way in which they were prohibited. So since it goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, and so therefore Rabbi Yehuda lists those cases of De'i where it's a prohibition, but they still got married, and so therefore in those cases you require chalitza. So according to Rabbi, listening so the chazer v'kitchel meis b'labanim. Why doesn't it list this also? This other case, somebody who does chalitza, meaning he severs the marriage with his yevama, and then at that point, really he's not allowed to get married, but it's a regular prohibition, not kares. And then he went back and betrothed her, which he's not allowed to do. Umeis b'labanim. Why don't we list that case where he then dies without children? Why don't we say the nigu dehi asura, since she's prohibited to marry, also her co-wife is prohibited to rasa nami asira. Why don't we list that case? Says the Rish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan according to Levi. Why doesn't our Mishnah list also that case? So he says, why doesn't he list that case? Because our Mishnah is saying, so why doesn't he list that case? So the Gemara explains, well, since both of them are going to be prohibited under those circumstances, because once he does chalitza with one wife, he's prohibited to the second co-wife as well. So therefore, he can never have a circumstance where the other brother marries a co-wife. And so therefore, we'll never have the co-wife of a co-wife. So that's the reason why it's not concluded. So the Gemara says, why doesn't Rabbi Yochanan respond to Rish Lakish? Why didn't he say, no, these are people who are prohibited by regular prohibition? And people who are chayav ve'lavim actually do fall to chalitza and yibum, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Why didn't you list that case? So he says, dvarav amrei. I said, I only answered it according to the position of Rish Lakish. And l'didi, according to me, all the brothers are not chayav kares on the chalutza, and so therefore, there's no reason why our Mishnah doesn't mention them, because they're chayav elavinim, b'nei chalitza v'yibum nidhu, and therefore Mishnah doesn't mention them because they do have chalitza and yibum. El l'didach, but according to you, the chayav krisus ninu, they are chayav krisus. They do fall to krisus. So fi she'enam b'tzara. According to you, they are chayav krisus, and so therefore. Nevertheless, we don't include them because they don't have a co-wife's co-wife, and so therefore they're not included in the cases of our Mishnah. All right, we'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address them.